Bust it.
They present the popular radio program Political Platform on the Ray Power FM network. Ray Power FM Political Platform, now on television. Keep track of the country's polity and be part of the process as they discuss and put political developments in the country into perspective. It's Ray Power Political Platform.
Hello and thanks for joining us. It's Political Platform. As the name suggests, we dwell on politics here, economics also, but this morning it appears it's more of politics. 2019 is gradually taking shape. When I say 2019, I mean the 2019 general election with the presidential election, the biggest of them all. From every indication, events have been lined up. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, a stalwart of the APC, will tomorrow be registering at his ward, Jada Ward 1, in Adamawa State, back to PDP, where he is, of course, one of the founding fathers. We also gathered from our very strong sources that between the 4th and the 6th of December, the former Vice President will make a formal declaration, decamping from the APC to the PDP, and this will enable him to be part of the December 9 convention of the PDP slated for Abuja here. So when I say realignments are going on ahead of 2019, then you understand what I'm saying. And the strong man of Lagos politics and indeed national politics, now the national leader of the APC, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, says those governors saying that they have endorsed the President Muhammad Buhari as the sole candidate of the party ahead of 2019 presidential election have got it wrong. He says they lack the right and that indeed all due process must be followed. Just as the PDP is seriously thinking, some PDP bigwigs are seriously thinking of the possibilities of picking a vice presidential candidate from the southwest part of the country. We all thought it has been reserved for the southeast, but there are some calculations going on, and if it plays out the way those that are raising the issues expect, then the PDP may go for a vice presidential candidate from the southwest. Expectedly, the incumbent vice president is from the southwest, so what will happen indeed if two of them do come from the southwest? And some will say, what will be the position of the southeast? Some are saying the Senate presidency and some other concessions may go their way. It tells you indeed a lot has been happening. My name is Amechi Anakwe. Utube Omoren is with me in the studio this morning.
Thank you very much, Amechi. Very interesting thing happening in the ruling party, and the mixed voices and the mixed messages we are hearing from key party members. You have the national leader and some other leaders of the party saying there's no automatic ticket for the president. And you have the governors saying we are endorsing him. It's clear the governors are doing that for one simple reason. They feel that if the president gets automatic endorsement, automatically it means they too, who are seeking second term, would also have their own automatic endorsement. They wouldn't have to go through the rigors of what the party constitution really says. Remember that most of these governors who ran on the platform of the APC and became governors in their states, especially those first-timers who came in 2015, really didn't have much of a political weight. A whole lot of them flew on the influence and on the popularity of a President Buhari, who was the flag bearer of the APC, to become, once you became more or less, once you have the APC ticket, you're assured of being the governor. So they're hoping that the same thing that happened in 2015 will sell through for them. If President Buhari has this automatic ticket, as they are trying to lobby, because so much lobbying is going on, automatically it would also extend to them as well. So, but the PDP, well, I don't know, as much as we say the PDP has tried to reform itself, we continue to hear things that seems to suggest that these people are not really repentant in their old ways. Impunity, imputation is also real. We've seen what the campaign offices of Professor Adeniran has said, and even Bode George also have said, accusing the NCC of trying to favor one particular candidate, specifically referring to Uche Secondus, who was the deputy national chairman of the party, who is being thrown up, of course, by the governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike. So,
not just Nyesom Wike. Yes. We had some of the PDP governors are beginning to indeed edge towards Secondus, but some other forces within
because
the party
he is doing the necessary lobbying.
We need to rescue the party from the governors. But One person gave an instance that you just have to leave it for the governors. Look at the issue, the case of the APC, where you have Odigi Oyegu as chairman. Because he does not enjoy the support of the governors, they simply refuse to fund the party.
And they undermine his position.
His position. And that's why APC Secretariat has been struggling to even pay utility bills. And they said the PDP governors have said we are the ones to fund the presidential campaign.
And they've been the ones funding the party
and
as well.
If you don't allow us to dictate what will happen, we step out, and you do the funding and you understand what you really mean. So it's a big problem for the parties and for Nigeria's democracy. As usual on this program, we'll have a guest, Ayokunle Fagbemi. Of course, so many of our listeners writing in on moved by the Nigerian government, approved by the Federal Executive Council to engage the services of economic consultants from Malaysia to help in the implementation of the economic recovery and growth plan. One move Nigerians have indeed criticized. He will be weighing in on that. And on the EFCC DSS face-up, Magu, the acting chairman, says no hiding place for the retired SAC DG of NIA, IOK, and of course the former DG of the DSS, Ita Etbeyong. He says there's strong evidence that at the appropriate time, the FCC will move against those two members. First, let's hear from you, and of course, bring you into the program. But before then, a short break. Please don't get away.
Bust it.
They present the popular radio program, Political Platform, on the Ray Power FM network. Ray Power FM Political Platform, now on television. Keep track of the country's polity and be part of the process as they discuss and put political developments in the country into perspective. It's Ray Power Political Platform.
Welcome back from the break. It's the mail segment, and I'm Amaka Okoro.
And I am Aladi Idoko. Welcome.
We'll begin with a mail from Jacobs Kajo from Abuja, and he writes on President Muhammadu Buhari's style of governance. The mail reads, "Dear Political Platform crew, will it be right, through deductive reasoning, to infer that the government of President Muhammadu Buhari is falling apart as a result of the actions of unruly political appointees? Frankly speaking, if anyone had told me President Muhammadu Buhari would preside over a government and condone the excesses of the DSS by countering his submissions to the National Assembly twice, and now the effrontery of stopping a sister organization, the EFCC, from performing their constitutional duties, I would never have believed. But that is exactly what is staring us in the face now. From unfolding events, it will not be wrong to assert that the President Muhammadu Buhari's government is built on a fulcrum of conflict of personality and interest amongst the political appointees. Hence, everyone is pulling to the direction he or she desires, as the case may be. The President should save his government's further embarrassment by reining in those appointees who are hell-bent on upsetting his government through show of power, and the earlier he does that, the better, so as not to give room for Nigerians to begin to adduce different reasons for his silence and inability to call the officers to order."
Still in that light, Shegun Bansho in Kuja Abuja says, "I listened to the interview with former director of the DSS, Mike Ejiofor, where he struggled to defend the DSS blatant disobedience of a court order secured by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Surprisingly, he failed to cite any law which prevents the State Security Service from being investigated by the EFCC and other constitutional institutions. Given the president's indifference and apathy to the embarrassing supremacy battle and impunity within his administration, the burden now lies on the Senate to investigate and come out with a comprehensive result."
And more reactions. This particular one is coming from Ajibola Oduwale from Lagos State, and the mail reads, "The question you people ought to have asked Mike Ejiofor is, if EFCC has no power to investigate SSS and NIA, does it also mean that EFCC has no power to investigate former officers of both SSS and NIA? Remember that both officers aren't with the NIA and SSS again. Thanks." And that is how far we can go on today's mail segment. Keep sending your contributions to us. Send them through to us to politicalplatform@yahoo.com.
Thank you so much for the mails. Of course, I will make efforts to bring in top government functionaries to this program to share with Nigerians their policies, operations, and programs. A lot is being done, but of course, how would the people know when you don't really reach out to them? Of course, a quick reference to the mail from our listener on the policy of the Nigerian Army that was announced yesterday. If you're a member of office or a member of the Nigerian Army, you must be able, before 2019, end of 2018, I think 2019, you must have grasp of the 3 major Nigerian languages, Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba. Of course, it is. What a policy the military says will help officers and men to indeed relate more and better with their host community members wherever they are posted to, and of course, enable them to understand the country better. Well, there may be some reasons behind that move, but the first thing that went through my mind when I heard that news yesterday was, what will happen to the minority languages? What will be going on their minds? Will they feel schemed out of things in Nigeria? Are we telling them in another way that their languages are inferior to the big languages? Nigeria has over between 250 and 300 languages. We already have our lingua franca English. We have our pidgin, but the military says you must speak this language. I believe it should be, like our listeners suggested, some moral persuasion, encourage officers and men to speak the language and not to make it compulsive. Every part of the world, even in the United Nations, if you can speak only and understand only one language, you're good enough to be employed. English, French, Spanish. But they will tell you a second or third language is an added advantage. It's not compulsive. Making it compulsive tells you that your own language is inferior. Yes, if there's a need for promotion of a good posting, they can tell you, if you speak Yoruba, for instance, if you're Igbo and the posting is in a 2nd Mechanized Division in Ibadan, they will look at the CVs and potentials of those that may likely get the posting. If they discover that you can speak the language, then it's an added advantage. That's the way it's done. Human resources experts will tell you that. But beyond this, we don't really know other reasons why the military took that decision. But from purposes of hindsight, maybe they shouldn't make it compulsive.
I was particularly very miffed and surprised, actually, by that directive, because I'm yet to be persuaded as well as a Nigerian if somebody's a member of the military. Like you said, you have several other ethnic groups in Nigeria. People will begin to feel, so my language is not important. If you want me to speak your language, how about you also learn my own language? And I think also is a policy that would have been most applicable to the Nigerian police, because they are the ones that relate more with the civil population. They are posted into different local government. A man from Bauchi, for instance, can be posted to somewhere in Rivers State.
Why the military are usually
confined in barracks, and their most important priority, and as a line in the Constitution, is the territorial integrity and protection of Nigeria. So I really, like I said, can't really make sense, heads or tails, about this particular. It remains to be seen until they come up with further explanations, but strictly is for their own personnel as well. I bet for those who want to join the military, a lot of people would say you are disenfranchising a lot of people who may have the passion to want to join, but they are limited by the number of languages they can be able to speak.
Because if you make it compulsive, and I have a flair for languages, but I may not be good with other skills and competencies needed for me to function effectively as a soldier. Now, if, of course, I was able to scale based on my flair for languages, and of course, the other areas suffer. The whole nation.
Funny enough, Amechi, if you find people who are polyglots in Nigeria, people who can speak either or all of the 3 major languages, Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba, they are mostly likely people who lived in the barracks. If you ask them, they'll tell you, we grew up in the barracks. You find them speaking. So you already have a system in the military, the barracks arrangement, where people from different ethnic backgrounds live. And that gives you an opportunity to
in an
informal environment to speak and learn and pick up this language as you move ahead. But making it a policy issue for recruitment, there's a question mark to it.
Big question mark. Now let's go to one issue we dwelt on extensively on this program yesterday. The face-off between the EFCC and the DSS. It lasted for several hours, prompting many to wonder whether indeed the president is fully in charge of his government. Of course, it was one issue that also came up at the Senate. The Senate resolved to investigate that, and some contribution of the senators pointed at this direction, asking that indeed whether the president is in charge, wondering why appointees of the president who routinely engage each other in, unnecessary face-off supremacy battle. At the end of the day, nobody appeared to be calling them to order. But the acting chairman of the EFCC, Ibrahim Magu, was at the State House yesterday. The president inaugurated an audit committee to really take a look at the recoveries made by the different security agencies from stolen wealth, funds, and property, to indeed ascertain whether what the agencies reported to the president were actually what obtains on ground. And Magu told journalists after that inauguration that the EFCC has very strong evidence against Ayo Okedi, SAC DG of NIA, and of course Ita Ekpeyong, the former DG of DSS. He says if the EFCC does not have this strong evidence, they wouldn't go as far as wanting to arrest. And he says at the appropriate time, these men will be arrested and they will be made to face the music. Utibe, yesterday on this program, you spoke of the rivalry between the DSS and the EFCC. And from it's been on and on, and from every indication, this
is still part of the game. From the headlines you're seeing in the papers this morning, and even from quoting, of course, from what Magu said, you could clearly see that this is a clear evidence of, well, you are trying to undermine me, so I'm going to undermine you as well. Because I've also looked through, I still remember Mechi, after President Buhari came into power, he inaugurated the presidential panel investigating procurement of arms. The DSS was never invited. Ekpeyong Ita at the time, who was the DG of the DSS, was never invited because the DSS has never been involved in any procurement of arms. And all the people who were investigated at the time are now, right now, facing trial in one court or the other. So I'm a bit circumspect anytime the EFCC does all these things about arresting people, high-profile people, because a lot of people have said at the end of it, how many of these persons have been successfully prosecuted? Ayim Pius has been arrested by the EFCC. You expect him to be charged to court, but we also heard the release. I'm not totally certain on that. We also heard that they obtained an order of warrant to keep him for another 30 days. So when so much noise has been made about arresting a particular individual, and at the end of the day, you dilly-dally in the process of investigation, you keep the person down and eventually take the person to court, and it takes another long period before any meaningful progress can be made in the trial. It makes us, Nigerians, to begin to question, what is it about? Is it really about fighting people or fighting corruption, or the ego war that exists?
The processes may not be correct, but some people will say if there's job to be done, those jobs must be done. Is a case apparently of if you tackle me, I double you, between the EFCC and the DSS. Of course, it is one rivalry that has not gone down. It's been escalated. Some persons are talking about procedure on the part of the DSS, saying if the EFCC has some issues with the DSS, there's some procedure to take. My mind quickly went to the invasion of the houses of the judges by the DSS, who were shouting about procedure then. The DSS said, what are you telling us about? What procedure? Now the DSS is talking about procedure.
Let me quickly add that the DSS, from information we've also gathered independently, are saying we have no problems. We've done an investigation when we came in. DSS under Laodora. We've done an investigation since we came in. We've investigated the tenure of Ita Ekpeyong from 2010 till 2015. We don't find any issues anywhere whatsoever. So if the institution itself says it doesn't have any issue, we didn't see any issue of crime or corruption being committed, then you begin to wonder what is really going on here.
What some other things we are hearing is that maybe these are just speculations. Maybe the EFCC is not actually after Ita Ekpeyong, the former DG of the DSS. That there are rumors of the current DG of DSS misappropriating some funds left behind by Ita Ekpeyong, and they just wanted Ita Ekpeyong to come in so that they can be able to establish a case against the current DSS. That's why the DSS has said no matter what, this man will not be taken in. But these are all speculation. We hope the whole truth will come to bear when the Senate investigation panel begins work, and we indeed begin to, of course, get to the root of the matter. Of course, on this program, for days now, we have received mails from listeners talking about the move by the Nigerian government to get in some Malaysian economic experts to indeed help in the implementation of its economic development program, the economic recovery and growth plan. And we have joining us on the line now someone who indeed has a strong opinion on the issue, a policy analyst and security expert, Adekunle Fagbemi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Ayokunle
Fagbemi. Sorry, it's just a small mix-up. Maybe you start quickly by telling us your perspective on this DSS EFCC saga.
Well, painfully, this is one of the most unfortunate things that we have just experienced within the Nigerian state, where you will have the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria deliberately flouting the constitutional provisions, particularly Chapter 2, wherein they go out completely of the scope of things and begin to award contracts deliberately to external agencies to do things that ordinarily should have been done by local resources, to which you will understand that in Nigeria, the federal government of Nigeria controls over 40 federal universities. And all these federal universities being controlled by the federal government of Nigeria, each one of them has a Department of Economics. And you have minimum of 3 professors in each of these departments of economics, meaning that you have minimum of 120 professors of economics within the purview of the control of the visitor of these universities, who happens to be the president commander-in-chief at any point in time. You have the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, and you have the National Institute for Socio-Economic Research, ISA, which is a world-class institute on its own. And then these are agencies of government, the university, that are statutorily provided for by appropriation, and they are grossly underfunded. And mind you, not only are they grossly underfunded, they are expected to equally generate revenue. So how do they generate revenue when the government of Nigeria outsources the things, the services that they can provide to entities outside the jurisdiction? Mind you, am I speaking out of context? I doubt, because the incumbent minister, Udo Ojema, in charge of the national planning and budget, said the key objectives of the laboratories of the study that they are giving out to this Malaysian entity is, 1, to identify all relevant stakeholders from the public and private sector that are crucial in the delivery and implementation of the ERGP initiative, so as to create ownership early on in the development process. That the government wants them to review and reevaluate the ERGP and sectoral plans against their targets and progress. For crying out loud, if we do not have universities and we don't have professors and we do not have students of economics, and on an average, every year you graduate nothing less than about 10,000 students of economics in Nigerian state, and you are now awarding contracts to a Malaysian entity. It is indirectly saying that all the professors are useless.
Now let's look at it from the government perspective. Of course, we know Malaysia is one economy that was rated below Nigeria in the 70s. But they were able to come up with their own development plans and implemented it to the letter. Today, they are up there. Could it be that the government has looked at Malaysia as one that has experience in economic development plan implementation? Because the emphasis is on implementation. The bulk of their work will be implementation. Is it that the government is trying to tap on those experience?
My brother, let's be very frank with ourselves. How come Nigerian intellectual resources are retained for services outside the country? How come each and every one of us provide these services outside Nigeria? And when it comes into the Nigerian state, our government exhibits a level of inferiority complex. It is most unfortunate that, the person that presided over the Federal Executive Council, as they want to call it at all times, was a professor himself. If you have a National Economic Council, which is a statutory constitutional provision, the most important thing that should have been done by people who are right-thinking and are nationalistic in their orientation and that are in government is for them to have created a research and technical advisory committee that would have been comprised of all the professors and heads of departments of economics of the various universities in Nigeria, tasking them appropriately, so that all this funding that they are giving out, this level of inferiority complex and desire to belong to the global cartel by this incumbent government is most unfortunate.
Okay, we just have to thank you so much, Ayokunle.
The kidneys for oil palm from Nigeria. Nigeria donated the first oil mill to Malaysia. So what are we trying to talk about?
Thank you so much. I think we're out of time. Thank you so much for your intervention. We do appreciate.
Thank you.
The much you can take on today's edition of the program. Thanks for being part of it. The final edition for the week is on Friday. Please be part of it. My name is Amici Anokwe.
Bust it.